Welcome to Table Talk and Tumbleweeds,
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Wheatland, Wyoming.
where the wind is strong.
And the spirit is stronger.
I'm Pastor Joshua of Covenant Lutheran Church.
And I'm Pastor Lisa of the Wheatland United Church of Christ. Table Talk and Tumbleweeds is a weekly discussion that focuses on local issues and concerns in the context of the Christian faith.
And vice versa.
Exactly, because we believe that the gospel meets people where they are, and where we are is rural Wyoming.
This show is about what the world looks like in this place, what our faith offers this community, and what this community has to teach the rest of the church.
You can find us at KYCN 92.7 at 11:30 every Monday.
And if you miss a show, or if you want to listen again, you can find us at Table Talk and Tumbleweeds, wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a website with all this information, which is ttandt.org. Today's show is part 2 of our conversation with Tim Millikin, the pastor at Circle G Cowboy Church in Glendo. Last week, Tim talked about coming to God, living your faith, and what horses can teach us.
This week, we continue our conversation and talk about stewardship and management of creation and what we can learn from predators, things like coyotes and wolves, as well as other wild things like screwworms and the dreaded Leviathan. When you first said something about that you wanted to talk about the relationship with the horse and how it's spiritual, in my head I was like, well, can we talk about our relationship with the horse as the same way about our relationship with the land? And then I wanted to find a passage, and so I found a couple of passages, and one is this passage, Job 38 and 39, and I'm just going to run to the part just where it says in Job 39:19, and this is the passage in Job where all these horrible things have happened to Job, and his friends are telling him it's all his fault. You must have done something to make God mad, because that's otherwise. And Job is like, nope, I didn't do anything. And finally Job gets mad at God and says, I want you to explain to me why you're doing this to me. And this is when God answers him out of the whirlwind, right? And basically he says, the Lord answers Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man, and I will question you, and you will declare to me. And it goes on. There's all of these questions. Where were you when the world was made? But then there's this lovely image. Do you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with strength? Do you make him leap like the locust? His majestic snorting is terrible. He paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He laughs at fear and is not dismayed. It's just this wonderful description of this horse, which I thought was sort of lovely. And there's another passage again a little bit later, Psalm 104. I won't read it, but it's quite similar in the way it talks. And I think I sent these to you. What was your thinking when you read that, or what are your, and maybe Josh wants to, I know what you want to talk about.
We're stewards of all that.
Yep.
And so the horse in particular, if you think about it this way, God made him for us to use or to be our partner. And so it's a 1,200-pound animal.
Yeah.
If he didn't want us to do anything with him,
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen. But I love that passage of Job, because every time I start to think that I'm smarter than God, I think of that passage and I'm like, you know what, I just need to shut up and just trust, because
You don't know what
God has, yeah, exactly. God has made all these things, and he's given them to us, and he's given us stewardship over them. And so we must be stewards, right? We must be good stewards over all of this stuff. And so humans are pretty good at being terrible stewards over the environment, over animals. We're terrible at that stuff. We need to be better stewards. And so you're not going to have a relationship with all of the animals, of all of God's creation, like we do with the horse or the dog. Obviously you're not going to have relationship with some of the things that cause us a lot of troubles, but we're still stewards over that stuff, and we're not supposed to be jerks about it, but we still have to manage that stuff. And people don't understand that either, and things have to be managed. And if it's not managed, then you lose it.
I think one of the things I think when I read this is, there's this idea that, that God gave it to us, and so we can do what we want with it. And I don't think that's any longer really much of a dominant position within Christianity, but there are people that still think that way. And then there's the stewardship idea. Our responsibility is to take care of what God has given with, and to be wise as we can. And I think that's the interesting part about this passage, is it doesn't change the idea of stewardship. What it does is it contextualizes it, right? With this idea that you are stewards, but you don't know that much. You are stewards and you really need advisors, right? And this is why I like that image that you talked about before of the dog running back to check. Okay, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I'm just checking. Because the dog, I know more than my dog. My dog knows stuff that I don't know, but I still know more than my dog. I have a big picture. I need to train my dog that I can do what I want with it. I want to be able to walk up the street with my dog without worrying about what it's going to do, right? Because I have the big picture. Don't go there, don't go there. No, don't chase that person, So the dog obeys me. But at the same time, I got distracted by dogs again. I don't know everything, Like I remember once, this was like 2 dogs ago, when I was in Nashville and I was walking my dog in high grass. And I couldn't see ahead of me. And it was getting dark and I was out in the city park and I was walking along and all of a sudden my dog was about 20 feet in front of me on the trail and her hackles went up and she growled. And I thought, I'm just going to turn around. I don't know what's up there. It could be something that I don't care about, but I'm going to trust my dog's instinct. That dog was giving me information. Anyway, so this idea of, there's this line that I wrote down in here: the horse witnesses God's creativity that is beyond human comprehension. Right? That there's more even to the horse than we can understand.
Oh, I agree. We but most people don't try to understand.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of young guys who are cowboying and they're maybe thinking about coming from the dark side, so to speak. It's not really the dark side; it's just another way of doing it. But coming over to the stuff that I have learned in the last 20 years, I tell them, man, if you think you're pretty handy right now where you're at and you think you're pretty good, then don't come over here because you're never going to quit learning. If you come over here, you come over this side, you never quit learning. And I think this is the same way with Christianity. Once you start walking with Christ, you're going to learn something. You're never going to quit learning.
Yeah.
You're always going to be learning something. You're always going to be asking God for advice. You're always going to be trying to figure something out. And so I look at stewardship like this, and it is nowhere in the Bible. Maybe you guys can correct me, but animals don't have a soul. We would like to think that they do, but I don't think they do. That, and there's not anywhere in the Bible where it says that they're going to be in heaven. And if you just watch animals, they're God's creation, but they're programmed a certain way and they act a certain way because that's the way they're programmed. It's their instinct, like a dog, a cow, a horse. And once you understand the instinct, then you can shepherd them. You can help them to not destroy themselves, because if you don't, they will. Humans are the same way, right?
Yeah.
It seems like that.
Yeah.
God seems like. Do you ever wonder if God gets tired of going, man? Don't
Don't do that.
No, wait. Don't do that. No, oh, come on. You're gonna. You don't do that. You're gonna kill your. It's like I run.
Idiots.
Yeah, no, I run cattle, so I've got 500 yearlings, and I joke around, but it's true. It's like every day you go out, and it's like you've got 500 yearlings. It's like having 500 teenage boys. Every day you go out, and you're like, man, who thought that? It's like, man, seriously, guys, come on. And so I often laugh about that and think God has to look down on humanity and go, man, seriously, who thought this up?
Yeah.
Who came up with this idea? Who thought that was a good idea? Because it's obviously not working. Right.
Cattle are relentlessly creative at figuring out ways to ruin themselves, and we're even more creative.
Right, exactly. Yes. And animals are the same way, and so I know I might get in trouble with this, but a lot of the environmental groups or they think that we shouldn't manage the animals, that they will manage themselves. They will not manage themselves.
No.
They will manage themselves into well, not extinction, but it's a 50-year cycle. It's like this, and then they will eat off all of the grass, like the wild horse, for example. That's an issue that just drives me absolutely crazy. The horses need to be managed. Yeah. And they're not managed, and if they're not managed, they will just destroy themselves because there will be nothing to eat, and then they will all die off, and then they will come back again. It's a 50-year cycle, and if we, mankind as stewards, will manage them, then there can be a sustainable population. Yeah. And they will all be a healthy, sustainable population. But if they don't, but we don't manage them, and we fight about what we're going to manage them. And so, like you just said, God has got to be, he's got to be frustrated because we can't even manage ourselves, right? We can't even get up every day and manage ourselves.
Well, this idea of animals that we manage, and this is something that you, Josh, and I were talking about the other day, because so we've been talking about horses and cows. Yeah. And of course, the interesting thing about cows is, I mean, I don't eat a lot of meat, and it's not. I have no moral compunction against meat. What I have problems with is the meat industry and the way it treats animals. So my friends think I'm weird because I'll eat beef, but I don't really like eating chicken because I know how chickens are treated, and I don't eat pork because I know how pigs are treated. You know, but if my nephew slaughters his hogs, I am really happy to eat that bacon. Right? Again, but I mean, I have friends that are very, and relatives that are pretty hardcore vegetarians. And I was just like, if people stopped eating meat, cows would cease to exist because we'd have no reason to take care of them, right? Cows can't survive without human management, right?
Yep. Well, they'd just be wild. They'd be feral.
They'd be feral, but how long? But how long would they really last without us?
Well, some of the domestic ones now, not very long.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised they would adapt.
They would adapt.
There would be feral. There would be wild cattle. But a lot of the stuff that we have now, the genetics we have now,
Yep.
probably couldn't make it on their own.
And I mean, I think it's the same thing. Now, not all dogs, but pugs. Let's face it, if we weren't around, the pugs would cease to exist. Pugs, probably Chihuahuas. I mean, I think border collies and, they would continue to survive. But I mean, my broader point being that there's a whole class of animals like the horse, like the cows, like dogs, to some extent to cats. That's a much more uneasy partnership than we have with the dog. But these are animals that, we have a relationship with, and we have sort of mutual cooperation, right? So human beings, we wouldn't be where we are today as a species without the help of the dog, without the help of the horse, without being able to raise cattle and sheep and all those sorts of things. So these are kind of mutually beneficial relationship. But then there's this whole other class of people. And when I sent Josh the Job text, he went right for the Leviathan. And this is...
Yeah, so chapter 2 later, chapter 40, there's the Leviathan and the Behemoth. And one of the things God points about them is that they are uncontrolled and uncontrollable. Mm-hmm. He says, you can't put a fish hook in its mouth. It breathes fire. You can't do anything to do with it. And so what does our relationship with those animals tell us about our relationship with God? Because we can argue what those actually are. Leviathan becomes whales. Behemoth is very likely either a rhinoceros or a hippopotamus. And hippopotamuses kill more humans than any other animal. So can you trust these things? Can you have a relationship with these things? And more appropriately for where we live, coyotes and wolves. Can we have a relationship with those things?
Mountain lions.
Mountain lions.
Yep.
Do we have a
Big fuzzy
relationship with those things, or are those something else? I tend to look at this text as talking about the world is wild, no matter how much you try to impress your authority on top of it. But what do you think about this?
No, you're exactly right. There's a certain amount of animals in the kingdom that are not going to be domesticated, and that you're not going to coexist. I mean, you coexist with them, but you're not going to control them. The coyote now is interesting. He's interesting. I have a ton of respect for a coyote. We have spent years, hundreds of years, trying to exterminate the coyote to no avail.
So there's a lesson in that.
Yeah, I mean, to no avail. We tried every way to exterminate him. We managed to get the wolf. Now we brought them back, but the coyote, to no avail. He's thriving. There's more coyotes now than there's ever been.
And they're
after all of the stuff, they are very incredibly smart and they are incredibly intelligent. So I have a mutual respect for the coyote. Just like we've been trying to get rid of him for forever, and we haven't pulled that off.
So is there a theological lesson in this?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is. Yeah, because we've been trying to, or we think we are, we're trying to shun evil for however long.
Yeah.
We can't get rid of him. Evil's always here.
So you say the coyote is evil then?
No, he's not. No.
Okay, just making sure.
I don't think the coyote's necessarily evil, but it's an example of in Christianity there's good versus evil. There's good versus bad, and there's always going to be the bad. There's always going to be the side that are never going to follow God.
But do we define? Because, I mean, again, I'm going back to the Psalm text, and especially the Job text, when God talks about creating Leviathan, the fire-breathing behemoth of the deep. With the scales that laughs at human weapons. It sounds like the coyote to me. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
but God delights in this. It's clear.
And it's all His creation, and so those animals are not necessarily evil. there's some that will dang sure, like the grizzly bear, that dang sure kill you if you get crossways with them, you know. And we have to have a healthy respect for those kind of animals. But I like.
And I think respect is, yeah.
It's like the resources, the land. We must have a healthy respect for all of those things, and we must understand that some animals are just who they are, right? The rattlesnake's always going to be a snake, right? Yep. He's just a rattlesnake, and so if I think there's a story about the man who made a pet out of a rattlesnake, right? And then eventually he got bit, and then his friends and the doctors and everybody's like, man, what are you
thinking?
He's still a rattlesnake, right? And so there's going to be certain species that are still going to be like who was the guy that got killed by the stingray? Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
I mean, and I respect the man for what he did, but you can't blame the stingray for killing him. He was swimming with the stingray, and the stingray was being the stingray, and he ended up losing his life over the deal.
So we need to differentiate between wild and domesticated, but also that's not the same thing as evil and good.
Right.
There is still plenty of good in these animals that we have no control over.
Right.
And there's still some mischief in those animals we think we control.
Right. And we must have respect.
This once again feels very human.
Yeah, much as we must have respect for Satan, right? Because we know who we don't envy. I mean, we don't condone what he does, but we must have respect for who he is. We must understand who he is, right? To resist him, you must understand who he is.
This is why screwtape letters, things like that.
Yeah, and how he works, and and how the dark side works, and how evil works. You must understand how the other side works. It's like those of us in the Christian faith, right? Sometimes we make fun of other faiths, right?
Yeah.
But how can you make fun of another faith if you don't understand it? So now, if you understand what they believe, what they think, then you might still not agree with their faith,
right.
but at least you can respect why they believe what they believe. It's all about respect, and I think it's about respect. And we don't respect each other enough, right? You don't, and we spend a lot of time, Christians. I think sometimes we fall short on respect and understanding, right? I mean, how many people have you guys talked to? You guys have been in ministry longer than I have. How many people have you talked to that don't go to church because they were hurt in the church that they went to? They were looked down on because they didn't dress appropriately, or they didn't wear the right shoes, or they didn't say the right thing, or I mean, without just a little bit of respect, you don't know where the man's coming from. You don't know where I'm just thrilled they're in church, right?
Yeah.
And so we have people that show up. We have a guy that he hasn't been in a while, but he runs a crusher north of town. Sometimes he'll get off work in time and he'll show up, and he's got grease and crusher dust on his clothes, and I'm just thrilled that he's there.
Yeah.
He'll show up, and nobody in our church would look down on them. They would just, but I've got a lot of people that are real resistant to faith, or they were resistant to faith, or real resistant to following Jesus Christ, because they think that the experience that they had in church was the experience with Christ. And I try to explain to them that's not Christ. That is a man-made church.
Yes.
That's another example of things that we can screw up as man. We do a really good job. But Jeff Foxworthy says Christians are the worst evangelists in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
we're terrible.
Sad but true.
We're terrible. And the great Billy Graham says there's going to be a ton of people that have went to church their whole life on Judgment Day are going to be very surprised. They're going to find themselves headed a different direction.
Yes.
Really, when you break it down, we're all of the same religion. If you're a Christian, you are following Jesus Christ.
But I think that, I think there's a couple things I want to circle back to, because there is this distinction we're kind of making between animals that we have developed this relationship with, horses, cows, animals that are predatory. They are wild animals. You cannot tame a wolf. No, so then we could talk about things like wolf that are more predatory, or coyotes. And I sort of understand the way people feel about coyotes, but the word in there that's really important, I want to come back to, is respect, because I think there's different ways that we can talk about respect. Because I can sort of sometimes, okay, I really respect Jose Andres, right? He's a chef that is become very famous, has a lot of money, and anytime there's a tragedy, he formed World Central Kitchen, right? So he collects enormous amounts of money, and if there's a tornado or a war zone, he goes in with volunteers and he sets up a kitchen and he feeds people. I have an enormous amount of respect for him. And then I can sort of think about, I don't want to say anyone evil on the air, but then there are people that you can say, I mean, you say we have to respect Satan. I might respect Satan, but I'm going to respect Satan in a way that's much different than the way that I respect Jose Andres, right? It's like, so, and I'm not sure English has the way to talk about these two different ways of respect. So when we talk about the relationship that I have with my dog, or that you have with your horse, which might be a relationship of mutual respect, I think that's different than what it means to respect a wolf, or what it might mean to respect even like the screwworm, right? Which is also part of God's creation. And I'm going to guess that God took delight when God created that screwworm, and yet it is,
Causing a lot of trouble.
causing a lot of trouble. Could cause people to starve, could cause people to go broke. So what does it mean to respect the, and maybe wolves respect us, but screwworms don't.
I think you just have to put everything in its own category, right?
Right.
And just not try to overthink it too much. But so I have a horse who's retired. I have a horse who's retired now. All he does is raise colts for me. But I mean, he was hell on wheels when he was young. And my neighbor showed up one day, and I was just doing a little bit of groundwork and just messing with him because I was going to ride him that day. And he said, "Is there a problem?" I said, "Nope, but I have way too much respect for what he can do for me to get on without doing my homework first, right?"
Right.
And so it's the same way with anything that you're dealing with. You must respect everything for what it is and understand it enough so you don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so the wolf, the grizzly bear, you must understand what they are, what they're capable of, what you can do with it, and know your limits, and don't get too wild.
Yeah.
Be like Job, just trust it. Job questioned, and then God lined him out. So, hey, man, where were you? You just remember that God built all this stuff, right? And when he created all these things, there was a reason that he created all this stuff.
Yeah.
We may know the reason, or we may not. And so then we just try to figure out how to get along,
Yeah.
how to respect.
There's a thing that keeps coming into my head when we talk about this great respect. If you go into your King James Version, it talks about fear. And so I don't think it means fear as in being terrified and afraid, but at the same time, this idea of greatly respecting this thing, not just because of what it is, but what it can do. And for some of these animals, it's what they can do to us. We have to be not afraid, but to be greatly respecting of what it's capable of.
Yes.
What it can't.
Whereas with the dog, it's not that we're respecting, dogs can certainly do damage, but we're respecting that it loves me and I love it. And it's a very different thing we're respecting here.
But you're also respecting the relationship. You should not ask a dog to do something stupid.
Well, or of course, you don't want it to do something that's against its nature.
Yeah. Well, you might, and I mean, I've never really been a horse person, but I know people that have done horses, and horses will do amazing things for you out of that mutual respect. But you shouldn't ask it to do something. I think this is respect. You shouldn't ask it to do something dangerous unless it's absolutely necessary. And if a horse trusts you, or if a dog trusts you, cats don't trust you. But and but I do think that this idea of respect and what it means. I guess my broader thing is that for me, the respect for even wolves and screwworms, and sharks, is that there is this, it's just all part of this amazing thing that God did. That God created wolves, and you can look at a wolf and it's like, yeah, that thing doesn't care about me. That wolf only has a relationship with God in some ways, right? And with God's creation. I mean, that's the part that's amazing to me when I read the 104th Psalm, which starts, everyone knows this, bless the Lord, O my soul, O Lord my God, thou art very great. We know that passage, but it goes on, and all of creation is saying that to God too, right? And they're not saying it through us. They are speaking to God directly, that wolves are part of God's wonderful creation in the same way that dogs and horses are as well.
I just love sea monsters.
You just love the Leviathan.
I'm convinced every time you see a sea monster in biblical scripture, that's a creation story. And it's trying to tell you, remember, humans are great and humans are wonderful, but you know what also is great and wonderful? Everything else.
Everything else. Yep.
Even the sea monsters, even the land monsters. Creation is bigger than humans. And I think we need to remember that every now and again. And I think we're really bad at remembering that every now and again.
I did look up the Leviathan a little bit and look at some of the textual stuff on that, and it's the chaos monster, which I really it's the reminder that everything that all this stuff in management, there's something outside of that can just sort of come in and just like it's like the reminder that you're not as in charge as you think you are, which yeah.
We're really not in charge very much.
We're not in charge.
Have you guys ever thought of that?
No, I think about that all the time.
I tell people that all the time, and it's like, we're really not. We think that we're in charge of all kinds of things in life. But
Yeah.
We're really not, Really, the only thing that one of the few things, probably the only thing that we really get to make a decision and we really get to be in charge of is our salvation, right?
Yeah, well,
That's where we're going. We get to make that decision.
yeah.
Our pastor doesn't make that decision, but the church
I
doesn't.
can't choose for you.
Nope.
Can't choose for you.
So we get to make that decision. We have that power. The great Billy Graham said, if you find yourself headed for hell, you did that to yourself.
Do that to yourself.
Nobody else did that. You did that for yourself. You have that power. And that's the only thing that we really have power over. Everything else we're just we think we do.
Faking it.
Yep.
Well, that's our conversation with Tim Millikin from the Circle G Cowboy Church, and we look forward to talking with him again sometime.
Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. When I got home to Wheatland after driving up to Glendo to chat with him, I was just sitting relaxing and I was reading Reddit, as one does. And one of my favorite Reddit things is it's called Best of Redditor Update. And so what they do is sometimes people will post multiple things on the same issue, and so the Redditor Updates collects these all together into one long thread. So you get kind of a story. And in this example, I got home and it was actually a really tough one to read, very powerful. It was a 15-year-old girl who I guess it was the middle of summer, June of 2025, was diagnosed with cancer, and it had metastasized in her body. And the doctor said, well, that's it. You've got a few months to live. It's not operable. It's all the way through your body. And it was sort of, it wasn't interesting, but it was really sort of watching her over the course of a couple of months go from rage, denial, rage, why is this happening to me? She's angry at her parents for not fighting for her hard enough. She's angry at her body for letting her down. She's just angry, but gradually over those few months, she starts to change. And I think I really thought about Job and our conversation about Job, in part because that's really Job raging against God. Why is this happening? I don't know. It's not fair. This is Job. It's not fair. But what was sort of interesting was in the course of the months, it was about 3 months from the first post to the last post, but in the course of those 3 months, she starts thinking about, okay, what do I want to do before I die? And what she wanted to do was see whales. And so she made a post that she and her parents and a good friend of hers, they go to the ocean to see whales, and she's so excited that she sees whales. And then a couple of weeks before she dies, they take her someplace because she wants to see wolves. And it really struck me that conversation was so much like what we were talking about with Tim, right? That there are parts of creation that are hostile, that don't really care about us, and that's cancer, right? Cancer is like that. But then in reading this, it struck me that her contact with this other part of creation, with wildness, kind of helped her come to acceptance, gave her an amount of peace. At least that was my reading of it. And I know I sent it to you.
You did send it to me. I did read through it as well. And one of the things you pointed out was the one thing she really said was she was really upset she was not going to experience love. She wasn't going to fall in love, and she desperately wanted to. And we've talked about this before. Love is the ultimate in wildness. It's not tameable. It's not controllable. If it's domination, it's not love. And so this is one more wild thing she wants to see, one more wild thing she wants to be involved with. And when I think about that, I come back to Job one more time. In Job, the sea monsters exist because God is so full of love that God even loves sea monsters. So she goes and she sees the whales. She goes and sees sea monsters. The sea monsters are there not because God loves us, but because God loves even the sea monster. God loves wild things. And if that's the case, then God's love is wild. uncontrollable, not understandable or graspable by human beings, certainly not controllable by human beings. It has no respect for human boundaries. If you go to Psalm 23, it talks about how God's love chases after us in the way that a coyote might chase after a sheep. That's what the text says. It hunts us. If we're willing to say God's love is wild, we can say that God's love is not just for us. It's not just for me. It's not just for the people who are like me. It's for everybody, even those who we might call unlovable, because God loved even the sea monsters. You think God can't love you?
Okay, that's our show for the day. I'm Pastor Lisa from the Wheatland United Church of Christ. We worship Sunday mornings at 10 a.m., and we are located on the corner of 11th and Walnut.
And I'm Pastor Joshua at Covenant Lutheran Church, which is at 18th and South Street. We worship at 9, and we'd love to have you. You can find us here every Monday at 11:30 on KYCN 92.7 or at Table Talk and Tumbleweeds, wherever you get your podcasts.
Table Talk and Tumbleweeds is a ministry of the Wheatland United Church of Christ and Covenant Lutheran Church and is supported by an In the Mud grant from the United Church of Christ. We'll see you next week. And remember,
there's always room at this table.